Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from the Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.
The Sparkfile podcast may contain profanity and other adult content.
Please use your discretion.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I want to make or how I want to be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Welcome to the Spark File, where we believe that everyone is creative, but smart creative people don't go it alone.
I'm Laura Camion.
And I'm Susan Blackwell. If you're an OG listener, welcome back, Sparkler. If you're joining us for the first time, please know that all are welcome here.
Whether your creativity has been on pause during this time or you've clung to it like a lifeline, welcome.
But you may be asking yourself, what exactly is a Spark File? Where do I get one? What do I file in it? These are such good questions, y'all, and we have got answers.
Oh God, a Spark File is a place where you consistently collect all your inspirations and fascinations.
Here's the deal. We are makers who make all kinds of things.
We are. And if you're like us and you're making stuff all the time or want to be making stuff all the time, you know that the wellspring of inspiration can run a little dry, especially now.
But don't despair. We're here for you, and we are on the lookout for fresh ideas, images, and inspiration that spark creativity and pique our curiosity, things that inspire us to get up off of our asses and make things like this podcast.
Or an interspecies relationship that reminds you of your own humanity.
Okay. Or a body of evidence-based wisdom to help people move through the crispiest times in their lives.
I might need that one. Every episode, we're going to reach into the Spark File and exchange some sparks. And from time to time, we're going to talk to some folks who spark us too.
And if you're not careful, you just might find some sweet, sweet relief. So without further ado, let's open up the Spark File. Cams, I feel like we caught you. We caught you unawares.
You did.
What's going on over there?
I took a little micro nap, like a tiny, 20-second micro nap. I don't know what happened.
That's okay. You're back. And she's back.
And I'm back, refreshed and ready to go.
Cams,
Hi.
this is our first recording since the inauguration of President Joseph Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. How you doing?
What a week it's been.
How you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling a sense of calm. I mean, I don't think that all of the problems are solved or that all of the conflict has gone away, but I do find a little bit more peace just knowing that, most aspects of our government are now in the hands of people who know what they're doing and have given their life to serving the American people. And I think it's going to make an enormous difference.
What was that quote that you shared with me? I think it was on Inauguration Day, and I think it was Van Jones. Was it Van Jones?
Oh my God. Van Jones said, what did he say? Calm is the new thrilling.
Or boring is the new
Boring
thrilling?
is the new thrilling. Boring is the new thrilling. That's right. And so it is. This week has been effing thrilling to just not hear things. Sometimes I walk in and Wes will be watching the news. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, no, nothing much. And I'm like, that's so great. That's so great.
Yeah. And it's so apparent that this administration has inherited a lot of let's say unsolved business.
Unsolved business is a good way to say it.
I am hopeful. I am super hopeful that this very smart, very diverse group of professionals that are being pulled together are going to, everybody seems really committed to tackling it, to just putting together a thoughtful rollout of a COVID vaccine, the greatest health crisis that we'll probably face in our lifetime, hopefully, fingers crossed, just little things like that hadn't been tended to in any event.
And people still without unemployment and without jobs.
Yes.
I mean, it's
so
just,
much. It's bad. Yeah.
I think I'm just hoping that people on both sides can be okay with getting back to like a place of compromise. People on the far right and people on the far left are probably not going to get everything that they want, but can we, come to some compromise that makes us all feel like, you know what, I'm not getting every single thing that I want, but I am getting a damn good life and quality of life is improving.
Yes. So just feeling hopeful and, And here we are, and we get to be together. We get to record a spark.
We get to record together.
This is my favorite. As I said right before we started, this is the candy.
This is we're headed into and picking sparks is like going into the candy store. Like, oh,
it is.
I want some of these gumdrops. I want some of these gobstoppers.
It's so interesting. I always have a tough, it's like such an embarrassment of riches because the world is vast and there are so many great sparks to choose from. But it's always interesting to see like what gets chosen and what,
Yeah. And at what particular time, because sometimes like my eye will pass over things at a particular moment in my life and I won't notice it and then come back around and a sentence sticks out that I never saw before. I'm like, whoa, now in this moment, I'm sparked by that in a new way. So
should we dive in?
Let's dive in.
Should we open up the candy shop?
Yeah, let's open up the shop. I think you should be the first one in.
Oh.
What do you think?
I can. Meaning I get to come in and you're going to serve me, or I'm going to.
Nope, the other way. I want your spark first. Is that okay?
Oh, it is. I got confused.
Great. Sorry.
No, that's exactly. Yes. Okay. No, this is great. I'm ready to go. I was ready to sit back.
I think our metaphor broke down a tiny bit, like,
that's okay.
Getting into the store and whatnot, but nonetheless.
I don't know why I had it in my mind that I was like, I'm going to chill. I'm going to be chilling like a villain and taking your spark. But no, I'm ready to go. And here I go. The candy shop is open. Shing-ling-ling-ling-ling. Come on in. So this spark that I want to share with you was sparked by a conversation that you and I, Cami, were actually having recently with an artist.
Oh.
She is, I'm not going to name names, but she is a creative. She is a leader by profession. She is the mother of young children. She contains multitudes.
Mm-hmm.
She has been in her current leadership role for over a decade. And as she was talking, this is where you're going to be like, I know who you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
She was describing how she felt like she didn't have much creative wind in her sails. And the more that she spoke, the more I think it dawned on us that this is a person who is, it's more complex than this. There's, but the one aspect of it is this is a person who is profoundly burnt out.
Aha. Yes.
You with me?
Yep.
So I think, we both recognize that burnout because we have both lived through that, a burnout.
Yep.
We both lived through our own burnout. And I will just say a little bit about mine. Back when we were doing Title of Show on Broadway, we were all really drinking from the fire hose of glory. Like, so happy to be there, so happy to be doing it. But I was working during the day at my job. Then I would turn off my computer. I would run to the theater. I would eat just like a quick light meal. I would take a nap. That was before I meditated.
Mm-hmm.
So I would take a nap. I would wake up. I would warm up. I would do the show. I would sign autographs at the stage door. And then I would get home as soon as possible to calm myself down, get into bed, and do it all over again. And stuffed all around that on the calendar were interviews and press appearances and lots of running and showing up and just being my best self, being my best self
on demand. That's
cue.
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So underneath what people at the time when they were like, how are you doing this? I was like, I don't think this is any more rigorous than being a working parent of children.
Oh my God.
And I really meant that.
Yeah. And especially now.
And especially, oh my God, especially now. But underneath all of that, what I haven't spoken about very much publicly is that my private life was extremely stressful at the time. So I was doing all the aforementioned and resting on top of that very intense schedule. I was carrying the weight of a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, and it was really grinding me down. And I remember it got to a point where it felt like energetically a breaker blew and the power went out. It felt like my nervous system had been thrumming in that red zone for so long, and I had been spinning and worried. And it was like, I know I've seen commercials like this and TV shows like this where they show someone throwing a giant industrial circuit breaker and the power going out like in a high-rise building, and it just goes,
yes.
And
yes.
It was like my body couldn't keep the needle pegged in the red zone indefinitely. And so my body was like, you know what? We're shutting her down. And it really did feel like my body's electrical system made the call, and kind of the worry kind of abated.
Wow.
I'm not saying it was a good thing. I think it was like self-preservation.
Yeah.
And my body, and survival. Exactly. So, Cams, I know you have, or currently having experienced periods of burnout like that in your life. And it took me a long ass time to recover. Like, if I'm honest, it took me years to recover from that period in my life.
That makes sense.
And looking back, if I had to tell you specifically how I recovered, I'd be hard pressed. I think that meditation, AKA rest, had a lot to do with it. But looking back on it, I wish that I could share some of the things that I've learned diving into this spark with that version of myself.
With former you, past you.
Former past me. But nothing is for naught. And I'm sure that current and future me and current and future you.
Yeah. I was going to say that.
And future you listeners
needs it. Yeah.
Will hopefully still find this very useful.
Yes. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, without a doubt.
So as you were saying, like being a parent now, like I look at the time we're living in now, and I think about this artist we were talking to who is feeling so depleted. After periods of profound creative and or professional output, then you throw in some pandemic stress. Then you throw in a little political insanity and some periods of economic stress, positive but rigorous social change. And all the ongoing work around that. And those are just big picture demands of our capacity. There are those personal stresses closer to home, like raising kids, navigating Zoom learning and teaching, hybrid learning, navigating staying safe and illness and lost jobs and lost income and even lost lives. It's pretty intense. It's pretty intense to be a functioning adult right now.
I can't imagine. Like, I feel some days like I'm holding as much as I possibly can, and I don't have children, and I don't have a partner who is working out in the world at a job, that they're risking, getting sick every day. And there's just so many other factors that I think about. Oh my God, people are holding all of this.
All of it. Yeah. And it made me really curious. What is the current thinking about burnout? Is there any good current research-based, evidence-based ways to process this shiz and get unburnt out or avoid becoming burnt out? So I did a little digging, and Cams, I'm happy to report, I feel like I struck a vein of gold.
Oh, I can't wait. Oh God, help us, Susan. Help us.
Friends, Camion, sparklers, lend me your ears and permit me to introduce you to the work of Emily and Amelia Nagoski. Emily and Amelia are the authors of the book Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, and they are the host of a podcast called The Feminist Survival Project 2020. Not sure if they're updating the name for 2021, but the Feminist Survival Project 2020.
Okay.
But they are so much more than what they've made. And I just want to read you their bios real quickly. Emily Nagoski has a PhD in health behavior with a minor in human sexuality and an MS in counseling, including a clinical internship at the Kinsey Institute Sexual Health Clinic. She's been a sex educator for 20 years and currently works as the inaugural director of wellness education at Smith College. Fancy.
Whoa.
Okay, so that's Emily, okay? Amelia Nagoski holds a doctorate in musical arts in conducting. She is an assistant professor and coordinator of music at Western New England University, and she regularly presents educational sessions discussing the application of communication science and psychological research for audiences of other professional musicians, including Beyond Burnout Prevention, Embodied Wellness for Conductors. They are sisters. They are identical twins. They are smart as fuck. And they seem to love Broadway musicals. And they love using profanity, which of course made me fucking love them. And
oh my God.
It's really beautiful the way that they've brought their superpowers together to write this really helpful book that, because of their backgrounds in teaching and the arts, Amelia's work as a professional musician and a conductor, they seem especially well suited to speak to creatives. So
incredible.
Buckle up, nerd bags, because
Wow.
this episode is going to be full of gems, courtesy of the big brains and the hard work of Emily and Amelia Nagoski. They have done us all a solid.
Thanks, Em.
Thanks, friends. Side of Spark, I think we should totally invite them onto our show.
Oh my God.
If
That
you're
would be
listening to this,
amazing.
Nagoskis, our people will be in touch with your people, which is to say, we will be emailing you directly.
Write you an email.
So throughout their book and their podcast, Emily and Amelia Nagoski beautifully discuss so many ideas that we have been talking about for years in our teaching and around creativity. But I always appreciate when really smart, evidence-based writers share this shiz because it confirms and articulates what I know to be true anecdotally and or true through the school of hard knocksically. But it's so great to hear it presented in a very research-based way. So for instance, in the introduction to their book, they said something about the book that felt intuitively correct to me, and it aligned with so many things we've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast. They write that their book, entitled Burnout, and I quote, turned into a lot more than a book about stress. Above all, it became a book about connection. We humans are not built to do things alone. We are built to work together. That's what we wrote about, and that's how we wrote it.
Wow.
Love that sentiment.
I'm in love.
Love their collaboration. Loving you ladies. They're just super sparkish. So we're going to dig into a little bitty bit of this. I tell you, this will just scratch the surface. This is a little tasty, bite-sized, spark-sized sampler of their work. But if you like the cut of this jib, I highly recommend that you check out the book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, and their podcast called The Feminist Survival Project 2020. So let's dig in. Something that Emily and Amelia, this is the moment where I was like, and here is my book report. So something that Emily and Amelia talk about in their work is the distinction between stress and stressors. So there's stress and there's stressors. So according to their book, Burnout, I'm just going to straight up read this.
Yeah. Okay.
Stressors are what activate the stress response in your body. There are external stressors, work, money, family, time, cultural norms and expectations, experiences of discrimination, and so on. And there are less tangible internal stressors, self-criticism, body image, identity, memories, and the future. In different ways and to different degrees, all of these things may be interpreted by your body as potential threats. So that's stressors. Stress.
The shit that stresses you out, basically.
Yeah, the cause. So stress is the neurological and physiological shift that happens in your body when you encounter one of these threats. It's an evolutionary adaptive response that helps us cope with things like, say, being chased by a lion. This sentence is such a work of art. It is the cascade of neurological and hormonal activity that initiates physiological changes to help you survive. I love that. It is the cascade of neurological and hormonal activity. I love that. So they go on to describe all of that cascading and physiological activity. Our bodies push blood into our muscles. They keep us going and help us ignore how uncomfortable all of this is. The heart beats faster, the blood pumps harder, so your blood pressure increases, and your breath becomes more quick. Your muscles tense, your sensitivity to pain diminishes, your attention is alert and vigilant, focusing on short-term here and now thinking. Your senses are heightened, your memory shifts to channel its functioning to the narrow band of experience and knowledge most immediately relevant to this stressor. Plus, to maximize your body's efficiency in this state, your other organ systems get deprioritized. Your entire body and mind change in response to the perceived threat. So all of that is to say, stressors and stress are two different things. Stressors are the cause of the stress, and stress is the neurological and physiological shift that happens in your body when you encounter one of these stressors. And Cams, if I understand it correctly, and I hope I'm doing your work justice, ladies, if you process through the beginning, middle, and end of the stress response, you can complete the stress cycle. It's when we don't complete the beginning, middle, and end of the stress cycle repeatedly that burnout can become an issue. Like if we chronically get stuck in the middle of the processing, that's when burnout can become an issue.
I have a question. You may be, feel free to say, hang on to that because we're going to get to it.
Okay, great.
But I just want to ask you so I get like we might get stuck in the middle of the cycle.
Yes.
But is it also when we speak about cascades, but that the stressors like keep coming as well? So we're not like, before we even complete one, we've got another one.
Yeah. Yes. You know what?
We're going to get to it.
I think we're going to hit it.
Okay.
I think we're going to hit it.
I'm not going to worry about it. Thank you.
But it's a great question.
Oh, thank you.
So that distinction of like, stressors and stress are two different things is super helpful. It's super helpful to make that distinction for a few reasons. It means that you can learn to process stress fully without removing the stressors from your life. So for instance, if you're a parent trying to have a meaningful career/creative life, and maybe that includes leading and managing people, and you're also raising your kids during a pandemic that coincides with a lunatic political administration, bye girl, and it also coincides with an awesome but rigorous social movement. If all of that is happening, but you are separating the stressors from the stress response, it means you don't have to put your kids up for adoption or personally find a cure for COVID-19 or solve systemic racism all on your own. You can turn your attention to processing through and completing the stress response. And if I understand their work correctly, that can also mean that it can buy you, as long as you're not getting stuck in that stress response, and then that can lead to burnout, that can buy you the capacity to address, some of those, turning your attention to solving systemic racism in your little corner of the world, that sort of thing. So, so a bit more about all of this. According to the Nagoski sisters, emotions are tunnels. If you go all the way through them, you get to the light at the end. Exhaustion happens when we get stuck in an emotion. Amen to this. This reminds me of our creativity work when we gently encourage people to identify and create out of those things that give them a visceral feeling in their body, but to continue to move through it, to express it out in their work. So sometimes that can look like you're conceiving and of and pitching jokes, and you get dumb giggles, like you get hard, dumb giggles while you're doing that work. Or sometimes it's my personal favorite, typing and crying. That's when I know I'm onto something good, when I'm typing and crying. And it doesn't scare me because I'm so accustomed to it that it's sort of normalized for me. I know that it won't last forever. I know that it has a beginning and a middle and an end, and then it moves on. And I also know as a creative that it's an indicator that there is some really good, juicy, creative raw material afoot. Or as I like to say, there's gold in them thar fields. So back to the book. The Nagoskis go on to say, we may get stuck simply, here, this is for you. This one's going out to you, Laura Camion. We may get stuck simply because we're constantly being exposed to situations that activate emotion, like when we return to our stressful job every single day. No wonder helping professions are so exhausting. You're confronted with people in need all day, day after day. No wonder parenting is so exhausting. Once you're a parent, you're never not a parent. You're always going through the tunnel. Sometimes we get stuck because we can't find our way through. The most difficult feelings, rage, grief, despair, hopelessness, may be too treacherous to move through alone. We get lost and need someone else, a loving presence, to help us find our way. So that speaks to the question that you had, Cams, which is there can be sort of, depending on how your life is structured or the season of your life that you're in, this sort of ongoing onslaught of stressors, the greatest hits coming at you and coming at you and coming at you.
This is also reminding me of a spark we did a while ago where we were talking about like emotions need to stay in motion. And,
that's right, Camion. Emotions need to, yes.
When they get stuck is when it's the problem, or when we block them, or we try not to feel them, or we're like, I'm going to set that aside. I'll feel it later. But if we can actually let it move through us, it will keep moving and we'll get to the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I also think of that when you say that. I always think of, I'm lucky enough to live in a space where I can see big sky. Like I see big sky where I live, and what it means is we see weather systems. We see them hundreds of miles on the horizon. We see them rolling in, and we see them pass around us and by us and through us. And it's like that too. It reminds me of like clouds rolling in, precipitation dump, clouds roll out.
Yes.
And it's that emotions need to stay in motion. That's exactly it. I
am loving this. I'm taking so many notes, by the way. I'm sure everyone is. Just keep going.
Note it up. I hope you're not driving. Here we go. Throughout this whole book and all their work, Emily and Amelia Nagoski encourage a world where we lean on each other and rely on each other, which I think is such beautiful advice. It reminds me of the talk that you and I gave just this past week, Cams, about not going it alone.
Yeah.
In your creativity, finding other like-minded creatives to link arms with. And we just want to say yes again to healthy, supportive collaborations and friendships where people tend to each other and help each other in making things and processing through the stress responses that come up around making things and just come up around life. You know what I mean? So I want to talk specifically, and again, this is scratching the surface. The work that these people have done is so deep. So just a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about how we can process through stress responses. And as they say, there's a whole catalog of ways to do this, but they stress this is not another to-do list. This is a bunch of tools that you can pick and choose from so that you can complete the stress cycle. So let's start with number one. Number one, top of the charts, is physical activity, exercise. Physical activity is the single most efficient strategy for completing the stress response cycle. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back. Physical activity is the single most effective strategy for completing the stress response cycle.
Suze, I have to chime in because I think you probably noticed a change in me when I started,
walking,
like 7 months into the pandemic,
and training. Yeah.
I was like, mother I cannot sit at this desk all day. It's like the anger and resentment was boiling up in me of like how much
Yeah.
work had just like piled on. And
Yeah.
then I committed to, I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk every day, and I'm not going to put any further pressure on myself.
Yeah.
Just walk, just do that. And it was an effing game changer.
Absolutely. My sister Julie made a commitment to herself a few years back that rain, shine, sleet, snow, it would not keep her from her appointed daily walk. And that walk might last 7 minutes. It might not be a long walk, but she gets up, she gets out, and she walks. And I can see how I think she'll keep doing it for the rest of her life. And I can see how it's changed her life in this great way.
Yep.
Hunter Bell, when Hunter Bell, one of my besties came to live with us for months during the pandemic, and Hunter Bell got me up and exercising again.
Amazing.
And I've said to him, I think that I know you changed my life and you might have saved it, because it really, for some reason, I wasn't getting there on my own. And sometimes I just want to acknowledge when you're in that burnout space, the thought of adding exercise to your life can seem daunting. And I have felt that very recently. Like I'm very present to what that feels like.
That's right.
But maybe start with literally baby steps. Like maybe it's like the walk to the mailbox and back. And if you're somebody who has had COVID, as I know people we love and many, listeners, and even one of the Nagoski sisters has, that can be daunting, but I just want to put it out there. But it's not the only, physical activity is not the only way to process, that stress, process through that stress cycle. And they say in their book, physical activity, literally any movement of your body, is your first line of attack in the battle against burnout. But it's not the only thing that works to complete the stress response cycle. Far from it. Here are some other evidence-based strategies. Next up, breathing. Deep, slow breaths down-regulate. I'm reading straight from their book, so please enjoy. Deep, slow breaths down-regulate, which is my new favorite verb. Down-regulate the stress response, especially when the exhalation is long and slow and goes all the way to the end of the breath so that your belly contracts. Breathing is the most effective when your stress isn't that high, or when you just need to siphon off the very worst of the stress so that you can get through a difficult situation, after which you'll do something more hardcore. Also, if you're living with the aftermath of trauma, and I want to say here that trauma and burnout are two different things, and they speak beautifully about that in their podcast. If you're living with the aftermath of trauma, simply breathing deeply is the gentlest way to begin unlocking from the trauma, which makes it a great place to start. And I thought it'd be fun, Camion, if we did some breathing now.
What?
This is straight from, we're getting interactive.
I'm in it.
So this is straight from their book. We do a lot of this work in our workshops. And frankly, I do a lot of it in my own life and work because I know that when my body is in stress response, this is something that can de-excite my nervous system or down-regulate it, as I just learned.
Yes.
So this is what I'm going to do. This is going to take we're going to take about 90 seconds or 2 minutes to do this. So please enjoy. First, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. Then we're going to do it. And again, this is straight from their book.
Okay.
We're going to breathe in on a slow count of 5. We're going to hold that breath for 5. And then we're going to exhale on a slow count of 10. We're going to do it 3 times. And I'm going to count it out for you. So if you're in a place where you can safely do this, play along. If you're in a place where you can't, mark this. We're about probably 30 some minutes into the podcast. You can come back to it later. Here we go. So in through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5, and hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And through the nose, 2, 3, 4, 5. And hold, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exhale, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did we do that 3 times?
We
I
did.
lost count. Okay,
we
great.
did, yeah.
Very good. How do you feel, Cams?
It feels good. It feels really, really good. It's
I'd like-
such a...
It's good, right?
Yeah.
I'd like to invite anybody who wants to please sample that and make it their ringtone. In through the nose.
2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Exciting.
It's super helpful. And I do that. I don't do that on a daily basis, but I do it with some frequency. So please
I
enjoy.
do too. And sometimes while I'm walking.
Nice. Yeah. So you're getting both. You're getting both.
Double whammy.
So this one was super interesting to me because it's another one. It felt right to me intuitively based on my own lived experience, but it was great to hear them present it in a research-based way. And it is positive social interaction. Casual but friendly social interaction is the first external sign that the world is a safe place. So they suggest, like when you're buying a cup of coffee, just to say, have a great day to the barista, or complimenting a stranger's earrings. It's a way of reassuring your brain that the world is a safe, sane place and that not all people suck. And I have to say, this feels right to me. I was a shy kid. I'm an introverted adult. But when I'm out in the world, like if I'm this is classic Susan Blackwell, if I'm at a university, I will ask the cafeteria worker who is maybe like serving my food or putting food on a plate for me, what food they like to eat in the cafeteria. And they'll say, what's really good is that, just sort of that. Or we were at the hardware store the other night and a woman said, I love your braid. And I said, I love your mask. She had on like a bejeweled mask. And I was like, I love your mask. And I had a feeling in my body after it happened. And it really does have an effect. But what I didn't know is that it's more than just like, oh, that feels good to connect even briefly with another human being. It's completing a stress cycle. It's telling your body like the world is largely safe and sane.
That's
and filled
amazing.
And
so incredible to think of it as completing the cycle, because here, like we live along this beautiful bike path in Florida, and there's a lot of people out and about. And so when I go out for walks, we'll do the, hey, good morning, hi, kind of thing. To
every time you do that, you're sending a message, I think, to yourself that the world is safe and sane. Most people are safe and sane.
So true. And I think even like in New York, obviously, when I arrived there from Kansas, not the kind of thing that's done traditionally is walk down the street and make eye contact and smile and say hello. But like you said, it can, that's more of the thing where when you go into your local barista, or, Starbucks, or bodega, whatever, wherever you're popping in each morning. And, that's like such a perfect place to say hello to the world around you and complete the cycle.
Yeah. And it occurs to me while we're talking that I'm thinking about times when your body is telling you there is danger present. It reminds me of Gavin de Becker's work, and your body knows before you do that danger is present, and to listen to that and do what you have to do to get to safety. So sometimes if you're walking on that path and you're like, there's something that's not right about that person approaching me from the front or from behind, like doing what you have to do to,
that's right,
to keep yourself safe. So, it's,
right. So it's not about like ignoring those things, but when you do feel safe, going ahead, completing the cycle by extending yourself in a positive social interaction.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. That just reminds me, note to self, these are sparks that you will hear on a future episode, but Gavin de Becker's The Gift of Fear, amazing. And The Body Keeps the Score. Anyway, Here's another great way to, continue through that stress response cycle: laughter. Laughter, Camian. And this is from their book, Laughing Together, and even just reminiscing about the times when we've laughed together. Even just reminiscing about the times that we've laughed together increases relationship satisfaction. They don't mean social or posed laughter. They mean deep belly laughs, impolite, helpless laughter. When we laugh, says neuroscientist Sophie Scott, we use an ancient evolutionary system that mammals have evolved to make and maintain social bonds and regulate emotions. This makes so much sense to me. And I think it's why when Nathan makes me laugh, or you make me laugh, or Hunter Bell makes me laugh, it does feel like home. I do feel very safe when, it's hard to, Nathan always says, it's hard to laugh when you're stressed. And it's hard. He also says it's hard to whistle if you're not happy.
That one, I don't know if I would have discovered, but
it's hard to whistle when you're stressed. Like, he thinks it's hard to whistle when you're stressed. He's a great whistler. And I can tell when he's in like feeling relaxed, because there's sort of all through the house, there's sort of like this like little meadowlark sound that's happening.
Oh my God, how sweet.
That's very sweet. So another one. So maybe the Nagoskis can add that to their list. Whistling. There you go. But I also imagine there might be something to that, because it does regulate the breath too. Like the flow of breath is it requires sort of constant, even breath pressure. I don't know.
You've got me thinking about the times, because Wes whistles a lot too. And it's when he's it's like a Sunday afternoon cooking, totally relaxed. And and also you're just making me feel like even more, I always feel appreciative of Wes, but he is responsible for 90% of the laughter in my life, because I think left to my own devices, I would work more and experience more burnout. And my God, I think there are times now I'll think of it differently, because I'll be obviously mid stress cycle, and I'll be damned if he won't just like make me laugh in some way. And I'm like, thank you.
Yeah.
Now I've just let go of that last little bit of stress I was hanging on to.
Yeah. And this leads, you set me up beautifully for the next one, which is affection. Affection. So most often this comes from some loving and beloved person who likes, respects, and trusts you, whom you like, respect, and trust. They say it doesn't have to be physical affection, though physical affection is great. A warm hug and a safe, trusting context can do as much to help your body feel like it has escaped a threat as jogging a couple of miles. Did you get that? A good hug. So a little bit more about this. The other night, I was telling Nathan about how excited I was about this spark and about this book. And I shared some of these strategies for stress completion, including something that they call the 20-second embrace. So let me read this passage to you. Hug someone you love and trust for 20 full seconds while both of you are standing over your own centers of balance. Most of the time when we hug people, it's a quick lean-in type hug, or it might be a longer hug where you each lean on each other so that if one person let go, the other person would fall over. Instead, support your own weight as your partner does the same and put your arms around each other. Hold on. The research suggests a 20-second hug can change your hormones, lower your blood pressure and heart rate, and improve mood, all of which are reflected in the post-hug increase in the social bonding hormone oxytocin. Yes. So I had shared that with Nathan, and then the next morning I was sharing with Nathan about a stressful situation I was experiencing. And after we talked through the stressful situation, I said, can we try that hug? And of course he was totally game. So we both stood up and we did the hug, and it was super awesome. But if you don't have a Wes or you don't have a Nathan, never fear, petting an animal for a few minutes can lower your blood pressure. So just go pet someone's dog or cat or horse or hedgehog. Just be sure to ask their permission first. Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Visit a
yes.
You know what I'm saying?
A rescue.
Yes,
or absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a reason so many people, in addition to having a lot more home time and stuff like that, I think there's a reason a lot of pets have been adopted during this time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So another activity that completes the stress response cycle, it's one of your favorites, Cams. Can you guess it?
Oh my gosh.
One of your favorites, a
Is it
go-to for you.
Writing? Is
No.
it? Oh my gosh.
I put you on the spot.
You
I'll tell
did.
you.
What?
I'll give you a clue. I'm going to give you a
Okay.
clue.
Okay.
There's a reason that one of my nicknames for Cams is broadcast news.
Oh, crying.
A big
Yes,
old cry.
A good old cry. Sometimes I'll just walk around and be like, I think I need to cry. I'm going to sit down. I have to cry.
Process tears. Yes. Yes. So they write, I was thinking of Sue Kayampa, process tears. So the Nagoski's right. Have you ever had the experience of just barely making it inside before you slam the door behind you and burst into tears for 10 minutes? Then you wipe your nose, sigh a big sigh, and you feel relieved from the weight of whatever made you cry. You may not have changed the situation that caused the stress, but you completed the cycle. So they recommend that you use your favorite tearjerker movie that makes you cry every time. Going through that emotion with the characters allows your body to go through it too. The story guides you through the complete emotional cycle. Yeah.
Yes. Those are mirror neurons, which I'm going to talk about in my Spark, which is amazing.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
But that it's so validating to hear, like, yes, you should, turn on a movie that you know will make you cry, or pick up a book passage that you know will make you cry and just let it rip.
You know, this also leads to, it's a little bit of a jump towards the what do we make of it, but it's something that I want to talk about with Nathan, which is sometimes, you know, Nathan's not in the entertainment industry. And I'm always like, oh, he's got this kooky, you know, I'm a very feeling person and this is who he's, you know, attached his life to. And so sometimes I think that like when we're watching, for instance, movies or programs that give me strong emotional feelings, like crying, I will try to govern it so that it doesn't, so I'm not too much, so it doesn't overwhelm him. But I think what do we make of it that I'm taking away from this is I'm going to put him on notice that I'm not going to do that anymore. That when I have an emotional response to something that we're experiencing together, I'm going to just go ahead and let it rip and complete the stress response cycle, get it out so that I'm not just like, I don't want him to think I'm crazy, or I don't want him to think that I am like emotionally unstable. Just say, I'm just like letting this, I'm just cutting this loose. And I was like, so that's a little, what am I going to make of it?
Great.
I'm going to make that.
Yeah. I love that. We've had that talk over here too, of just like,
you and I have had that talk, like cry it out. Cry it out. Yeah, I think, and just real quick, one movie that really, if you ever need, well, I don't know, different things work for different people. Something that really works for me is, there's the great documentary about Carol Spinney, Big Bird. It's a beautiful documentary that our friend Matt Vogel appears in, because Matt Vogel is Big Bird now. But the scene where Big Bird sings "It's Not Easy Being Green" at Jim Henson's funeral, that makes me cry. And maybe y'all will enjoy that as well. Complete the stress response cycle.
I think
friends.
Music is another like go-to.
Music,
you know, put
absolutely.
on a song. There are certain songs like I can't even sing along with if I, you know, halfway through the first sentence and I'm in tears. And so,
sure,
it's a good go-to.
Yeah. So here comes my favorite. This is my favorite way to complete the stress response cycle. And if you're listening to this podcast, it might be yours too. Creative expression. Creative expressions, babies. So they say in their book, like sports, the arts, including painting, sculpting, music, theater, and storytelling in all forms, create a context that tolerates, even encourages big emotions. Literary, visual, and performing arts of all kinds give us the chance to celebrate and move through big emotions. It's like a cultural loophole in a society that tells us to be nice and not make waves. Take advantage of the loophole. I love it. I love it.
Suze, this is one of those things when we are like listing why is creativity so essential.
That's right. Why is creativity essential?
Yes, it's helping us process.
That's right.
Sorry,
this one is no, you're right on the money and you're right on time, Cams. This one is, I think, is so great because you can either be the creative who is using your work to complete the stress response cycle, or you can simply bear witness to it.
Yes.
As an audience member, you can be sitting in the dark being moved by the play or the movie or the dance concert or the symphony or the choir. And that completes the stress response cycle too. You know, I have said this to my students for years. When you see someone doing something, and when we talk about taking brave creative risks and why do we want to aim to take brave creative risks and how does that light up our work? When you see someone doing something genuinely brave and risky, either in class or on stage, you are witnessing their expansion as a human. And just by witnessing it, if the audience is awake and attuned, the audience's humanity is expanded too. Just by being in the same room with the creative risk taker, all hearts expand, all boats rise. Catharsis is a completion of the stress response cycle. So by making work that allows you to feel your feelings, and by sharing that work, it allows other people to feel their feelings, and you're supporting people as they complete their stress response cycles and process burnout. And it can take so many creative forms. I'm so into this, Cams.
This is amazing. This is amazing. Is that part out of their book about catharsis?
No, I've been saying this for years to my students.
Yes.
But it dovetails.
Yes.
It totally into their work.
It totally validates that.
Yeah, it totally validates that. And it reminds me, I was watching on Hulu, maybe, In and of Itself is an off-Broadway show that a magician made. To call him a magician is reductive. But in and of itself, I highly recommend it. And you really see it. This is a person who has had made a choice to devote their life to their craft, and not just the craft of being a magician, but also a performer who gets up in front of people and takes risk and cultivates risks for the people in the audience, risks in a safe space. And you can see over and over and over again, people are having cathartic responses. They are processing through the cycle of stress response. Now, you might, before listening to this podcast, have watched that and been able, you might not have put it exactly that way.
Right.
But I would put it that way now, after having, doing the work that we've done and being exposed to this work. I was like, that's what he's doing. So in their book, they go on to say, one thing we know for sure doesn't work. Just telling yourself that everything is okay now. Completing the cycle isn't an intellectual decision. It is a physiological shift. They go on to say, how do you know you've completed the cycle? It's like knowing when you're full after a meal, or like knowing when you've had an orgasm. Your body tells you, and it's easier for some people to recognize than others. You might experience it as a shift in mood or mental state or physical tension as you breathe more deeply and your thoughts relax. This, Camian, reminds me of the work that we do when we talk about Thomas Schulteis and I made that Let Me Try That Again workshop. And we do breathing. We do that breathing, box breathing exercise with people. Yeah. And we are like, you want to do this until something shifts. And that can mean it feels like a physical shift, like your breath drops down. It can feel like your brain, if your brain waves and your thoughts were very jumpy and jiggity jaggedy, they might sort of go, boo, become more peaceful and a little more like a flat curve, sort of thing. But it is that thing. It's sort of like you want to process through until something shifts. There is so much richness in this book and in their podcast. And another thing that I just want to touch on lightly is their concept around human giver syndrome. This is a very big, deep concept, and it's taken me a lot of thinking, and I don't think I fully have my arms around it yet. So I just want to touch on it and say, according to their book, Human givers must, at all times, be pretty, happy, calm, generous, and attentive to the needs of others, which means they must never be ugly, angry, upset, ambitious, or attentive to their own needs. They discuss at length the connection between maintaining all of that human giverness and the connection to burnout. It's pretty deep. And if you suffer from a lifetime of positioning yourself as a human giver or being positioned by our culture as a human giver, it has deep roots and it's really worth some inquiry and it's worth looking at in order to maintain your own preservation. I think about that artist we were talking to and I was like, oh, there may be some human giver syndrome at play here. To illustrate human giver syndrome on their podcast, they talk about the fucked upness of some of the messaging in the book, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. You know that book?
It's time we talked about it.
We're going to talk about it right now. So The Giving Tree, you want to take a fresh look at it. It tells the story of this relationship between a boy and a tree. This tree apparently uses the she, her, hers pronouns. The tree gives and gives and gives to the boy, and the boy takes and takes and takes from the tree until the tree's an old stump. She's just an old stump. And when he needs it, the boy can now use her as a chair. So I loved this book when I was little. I found it to be so wistful and there was a melancholy to it and it gave little sensitive Susan a chance to feel all her feelings. But on their podcast, Emily and Amelia Nagoski talk about how problematic that story is when viewed through the lens of human giver syndrome. So Cams, if you will permit me,
yeah. Oh,
I'm going to read to you from the original Shel Silverstein book.
Okay.
The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein. Once there was a tree, and she loved a little boy. And every day the little boy would come and he would gather her leaves and make them into crowns and play king of the forest. He would climb up her trunk and swing from her branches and eat apples, and they would play hide and seek. And when he was tired, he would sleep in her shade. And the boy loved the tree very much, and the tree was happy. But time went by, and the boy grew older, and the tree was often alone. Then one day the boy came to the tree, and the tree said, "Come, boy, come and climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and eat apples and play in my shade and be happy." "I am too big to climb and play," said the boy. "I want to buy things and have fun. I want some money. Can you give me some money?" "I'm sorry," said the tree, "but I have no money. I have only leaves and apples. Take my apples, boy, and sell them in the city. Then you will have money and you will be happy." And so the boy climbed up the tree and gathered her apples and carried them away. And the tree was happy. But the boy stayed away for a long time, and the tree was sad. And then one day the boy came back, and the tree shook with joy and said, "Come, boy, climb up my trunk and swing from my branches and be happy." "I am too busy to climb trees," said the boy. "I want a house to keep me warm," he said. "I want a wife and I want children, and so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" And now, Camian, I'm going to interrupt that reading, and I'm going to complete my spark by reading from a book called The Tree Who Set Healthy Boundaries by Topher Payne.
Yes.
This is an alternate ending to Shel Silverstein's The Giving Tree. And here we go. "I am too busy to climb trees," said the boy. "I want a house to keep me warm," he said. "I want a wife and I want children, and so I need a house. Can you give me a house?" And the tree said, "Okay, hold up. This is already getting out of hand. Look, I was fine with giving you apples to help you get back on your feet. They'll grow back next season anyway. But no, I'm not giving you a house. You know, I've seen boys like you pull this nonsense with other trees in the forest. First it's the apples, then branches, then the trunk. And before you know it, that mighty beautiful tree is just a sad little stump. Well, look here, boy. I love you like family, but I am not going down like that." And while we're on the subject, the tree said, grabbing him by the collar of the shirt, "I recognize friendships evolve over time, and we may not see each other as often because you don't have time for your tree friends, but we used to be real tight. Now it feels like I only see you when you need something. How do you think that makes me feel? The boy took a long breath. He felt a sour rumble in his stomach because he realized he hadn't considered his friend's feelings. I bet it makes you feel bad, said the boy. Yes, boy, bad. I can't even remember the last time you asked me how I'm doing. How are you, tree? Asked the boy. He sincerely wanted to know. So the tree told the boy all the gossip from the forest and introduced him to the family of red squirrels that had moved into her trunk. While she was glad for the company the squirrels provided, she was concerned about the long-term health effects of hosting a burrow. So the boy called the local arborist to explain that squirrels don't eat wood. They only build nests in pre-existing holes, so the tree was in no danger. The tree was so relieved, and so was the boy. He loved his friend and was concerned about her long-term health because she had taught him the importance of empathy. And so it continued, the tree and the boy looking out for each other like that, both of them content in the knowledge that someone had their back. The boy attended culinary school. The tree took courses online and got her certification in small business management. They did their homework together nearly every day. The boy became a pastry chef. Together, they opened a bakery selling the best apple pies anyone had ever tasted.
Oh.
It turned a profit in the first 18 months, which is most uncommon. Eventually, the boy had a son of his own. And much later, the son of the boy had his own family too. Because of their friendship, the boy was successful and fulfilled, and the tree grew wider and stronger, standing tall and beautiful in the forest for many, many, many years, plus a few years even more after that. And as each generation played in her strong old branches, the tree often thought back to the fateful day when the boy had asked her for a house. In truth, she would have gladly given him her branches to build one. She would have given him her trunk to build a boat. She loved him that much. But then she would have had nothing left, not for herself nor anyone else. And there would have never been a home for the red squirrels. There'd have been no hide and seek with the boy's grandchildren, no bakery with the best apple pies anyone had ever tasted. Setting healthy boundaries is a very important part of giving. It assures you'll always have something left to give. And so the tree was happy. Everyone was. The end.
Oh my God.
There's those tears, Cammie, and process that stress.
Those tears.
I just want to say that was part of the Topher Fixed It series for young people. And if you enjoyed that, if it spoke to you, go to topherpain.com, click on Giving Tree, and you can print an alternative bookending for free. Oh my God, Topher Pain, you are a walking, talking human spark. There are other Topher Fixed It in the series. And if you enjoy them, if you enjoyed that reading I just did, consider making a donation to the Atlanta Artist Relief Fund, which is providing crucial assistance to artists during the COVID crisis. I'll tell you what, that's exactly what I did. I went and I made a big old donation, and I made it in honor of Emily and Amelia Nagoski for all of their amazing work. Please check out their book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle, and their podcast, The Feminist Survival Project 2020. If you like this podcast and you like profanity and you like deep thinking, check it out. And if you want just like a quick intro to their work, there's a great interview on Brene Brown's Unlocking Us podcast. And that's a great spark to start you off. So real quick, what do we make of it? Hopefully we make lives where we more consistently and thoughtfully complete the stress cycle. We move all the way through the tunnel of feeling our feelings, and we can also do that by exercising, laughing, crying, hugging, petting a pet, connecting with others, and creating. Most of all, you just want to keep those emotions in motion and keep those feelings moving. We can make work and support work that moves people, that makes people laugh and cry and feel their feelings. I think about that artist that we were talking with who's experiencing that profound burnout. And I think about how we can consciously make spaces and systems in our work and in our home lives where we can feel safe to process through our stress cycles. I think how we can consciously surround ourselves with collaborators who are also givers, who we can all work together to support each other and provide and receive that necessary support. But that means choosing collaborators who can recognize when someone in the group needs some extra support, time, and space to complete the stress response cycle. So that is my spark. It was a long, deep spark, but I hope that it will help people.
Oh, Suze, it absolutely
How you doing over there, Cams?
will. I'm doing good. That was amazing. I love that spark, that giving tree stuff. One, it was incredible. Topher fixed it. It was incredible.
Topher Payne is Topher Payne, playwright. Pardon me, I burped. Topher Payne is a playwright, a screenwriter, an author, an amazing, a director, like based in Georgia, just an amazing human being. Topher would also be an amazing guest on this podcast.
Amazing. I say we do a shout out to Topher and see if they're willing to come on,
Topher.
But it really had me, it had me thinking about my mom, and that is part of why I was crying, just because my mom hated the Giving Tree book so much. Like she felt so much resentment, frankly, for it was obvious the tree was a woman and was like continued to give until they had nothing left.
Yeah.
And that would be some expectation. You know, we had the book and I remember it and I read it a lot, but my mom would always make this point about the book, even back, in the 70s.
Wow.
She was just like, this cannot be the way. And so I wish she was alive, to
read Topher Fixed It. But the thing is, Cam, it sounds like she fixed it herself. She knew.
Yeah.
She knew.
Well, she made sure to instill, a deeper understanding in her kids that, there's no good can come from being the martyr that gives every single thing away, just like Topher put it. Like,
yeah,
by that tree setting boundaries, it will survive for hundreds of more years to have great relationships with more people.
Here's a little teaser for you. If go just do a Google search of Topher Fixed It, The Giving Tree, and get yourself a good laugh by looking at the cover as he's fixed it. Like just the cover is fucking funny. Like it's
awesome.
Really, really good. So I hope that will get people to click on through. And I do encourage you to make a donation to support those artists in Atlanta.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, heck yeah. Heck yeah. Do it in the name of someone you love who, may be experiencing burnout, even if that someone is you. Kim, shall we take a little break?
Let's take a little break.
Peek, and then we'll
get myself together.
Back into the candy shop. Shing-a-ling-a-ling. Okay, back in a second.
Okay.
I hope that spark is helpful to people. It casts so much light from me on so many things that I feel like you and I are knowing and doing and teaching intuitively, but to have it articulated in such a beautiful way is super helpful. And it also makes it much more sticky so that I can remember to implement it in my own life, but also remember to bring it into the teaching in a really, really clear way.
Yeah. And it feels good to, have some of the things that we've been doing to be, validated, as we said, in that way. But it helps me personally to to do these things more intentionally, like with the knowledge
very
that what
consciously,
I'm doing.
thoughtfully, absolutely. And also to examine back to our artist, that was, really that conversation was the genesis of the spark. And I'm so thankful to that artist for having that candid conversation with us. Really looking at the structures that you have in place in your life and where I don't think they necessarily, depending on the structure, need dismantling. They just need calibration. They need adjustment so that they can hew more closely to a really healthy, strong, sustainable structure,
That's right.
Another reason I love the podcast that the Nagoski sisters do is that they podcast with their pets nearby, as you know, I frequently enjoy doing.
Yes, you do.
And so you hear one of them has this this dog named Thunder, and you just hear like Thunder chewing on squeaky toys or Thunder like yawning and shaking their collar. And I just, it reminds me of of our little podcast pets.
Yes, little podcast pets.
Kitty Bunny?
In your sweater while you're recording.
I'm looking at you, Kitty Bunny. Sweet girl.
What sweeties. Yeah, we've got our own podcast pets too.
Podcast pals. Podcast pets.
Hey, could we do like a line of stuffed animals that are called like podcast pals? I don't see why
podcast pals.
If Cabbage Patch Kids can make it, I don't see why podcast pals can't make it big.
We can do the Sparkfile podcast pals if it can be a line of plush toys, but it also has to be a Saturday morning cartoon and they should also mascot a breakfast cereal. Let's fully theme that shit. Okay,
deal.
Great.
Okay,
the Sparkfile podcast pals.
I love it. I love it. And I'm pensive because I'm reflecting already. I'm just like absorbing everything that you just threw at us there, because I feel like I've been needing that information my whole life. So it's a real game changer. And it's a real shift. I feel the earth shifting.
I love that. And I mirror it back to Emily and Amelia Nagoski. Thank you so much.
Doing that work.
Now come on our podcast.
Yeah. And now come on our podcast. Because also, burnout is just not something that for many, many, many years of our life on this earth, burnout was not considered really to be something real. And so it took the work of scientists and doctors and others to put all of this together, researchers to put all this together and be able to explain it, to give it the credence that it needed for people to understand it is a real thing. It's not in our imagination.
It's not a fantasy.
That's right.
It's not a women's psychosis.
It is not. It's lobotomy, not
give
necessary.
Give him cocaine for it. Just give him cocaine for it.
That's right. So wow. Okay. My spark at first glance might feel like a complete, 90-degree turn here. But actually, as I think about it, I think I've got a story that begins with a very, very, very burnt out person. So I think there is a link here, nice. and a few things that you mentioned have a little bit of overlap. So this is going to be interesting if you take this ride with me. My spark
candy shop ride,
candy shop ride. My spark begins with Craig Foster, and Foster is an acclaimed documentarian. And for years and years and years, he had been writing, directing, producing documentaries, and he was just completely effing fried. He was literally burnt out. Hold on one second. Mm-hmm. It was snot, frankly, from my crying. So give me 1 second.
I want you to know I'm leaving all of this in. This is gold. This is podcast gold, baby.
Yes. All right. So that was my snot. I think I'm okay now.
Special guest star, Laura Snot.
Foster, he was completely fried. He was burnt out. He was disconnected from his family, from himself, and his creative gas tank was beyond empty. It was way, way, way down. When you go way below.
This is a good complimentary spark.
Yeah.
This is great.
Yeah, right? So after, great consideration, he decided to take himself literally out of the work environment, out of the hustle and bustle, and go back to where he grew up to try to replenish his creative well, and frankly, try to get healthy again and revive himself. Where he grew up happened to be off the African coast near Cape Town with the ocean as his front yard.
Wow.
He told NPR his earliest memories. My earliest memories and deepest memories, most powerful memories, were of this incredible coast and diving in what I call my magical childhood forest.
Jesus.
He said it's one of the greatest ecosystems on the planet. So the coastline where he was had these dense like kelp forests, which literally, like when you're underwater, look like a forest of trees and, just swaying in the breeze. It's absolutely gorgeous. So here we have Foster. He left his job. He literally checked out of his former life, took his family and went back to his childhood home. And he decided that he would go free diving every single day. And he dove without a wetsuit or an oxygen tank in order to feel more connected to this ecosystem.
Can I pause you for just a second? I just want to acknowledge whenever I think I know where we're headed with this, but when I'm excited about it, whenever I hear stuff like this, I always have questions like, Craig Foster, how did you afford to do this? Like, do you have, I'm so into this, and it almost feels like a fantasy.
Yeah.
Because for so many of us, it's not an option just to
That's
be
right.
like, you know what, I've got enough in the bank that I'm just going to go diving in the kelp forest. But it sounds amazing. And I just had to acknowledge the thought. Rock on, Craig Foster.
Yeah. I don't know what his extenuating circumstances were.
Yeah.
But I can tell, like, from his career, he worked his ass off. So maybe he did save that money and decide.
Like, no shade and no judgment. But I'm
Yeah.
also like, ooh, that's a fucking privilege to get to.
It's a huge privilege.
Yeah.
But he also mentioned his health. And I do wonder if he had to take himself out of it because of his health. So, so there's a mystery there. I don't know.
Oh, that's okay. Rock on.
Yeah.
Rock on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that, if many of us, if we could do it, have fantasized about the idea of doing it. But I can tell you from the beginning, this story is going to turn out positive, but I don't get the sense that this was a joyful, like, I get to take a year or two to just, swim around in the ocean.
This was a person.
This was a person in crisis.
Yes. Yeah. Well put. Well put. Yeah.
So
before we're like, I'm so jealous. Be careful when you're like, I'm jealous of Craig Foster.
Yeah.
You just got to go dive with the kelp. Like this is a person who was responding to a real crisis in their life. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
exactly.
with you.
Okay.
Back in the kelp forest.
But back in the kelp forest. So he decided he would dive every day and without a wetsuit. And the water was sometimes as cold as 46 degrees. 46 degrees. So that was an incredibly brave thing to do. And of course, the water was like painful at first, but he eventually adapted to it. But he goes on to say about the water, this like the brisk temperature, you feel alive, you feel awake, you feel stimulated. But because you can feel the water on your skin, you can feel the slight temperature differences and you feel that much closer to nature.
Wow.
And as for his creativity, again, he told NPR, day after day, I slowly started to get my energy back. And I realized that there was this whole new way of looking at this underwater forest. And I started to come alive again.
Can I interrupt again?
Yeah.
It just reflecting on two things. One is the spark that I just shared about how the number one way to process through that stress cycle and, therefore hopefully move through burnout is that physical activity.
That's right.
So that he is like going, that's very like, talk about engaging all muscles, that kind of like, underwater work, and to do it in cold water. I've been talking with our friend Ashley Van Buren. Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Ash.
A lot about, I wasn't feeling so great some time ago, and she was like, I think you want to explore your relationship to cold water. And I was like, that sounds uncomfortable. But even just like cold showers, things like that. And so I have heard and read some stuff about, there's something about that combination of physical activity, regular physical activity in cold water.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, I'm not going to do it, but it seems like there may be something beneficial. Please consult your doctor before engaging in such activity.
100%. And I will meet you physical activity in cold water with number 2 on your list, which was breathing. Here is a man who is not using a tank.
You're a genius.
So he is.
Wait a second. So he takes an air
That's
and then
right.
he dives. And like, I'm sure he's constantly increasing his lung capacity and
exactly
stamina
right.
and then back up to the surface for air like a sea turtle.
That is correct.
Fucking amazing.
That is correct. So you've got number 1 and number 2 on your list so far. But I'm sure we're going to come across some more.
Shit. Yeah.
So on these dives, needless to say, he comes across a huge assortment of animals and sea life and all kinds of critters, large and small. Also, just to note, the waters off of Cape Town are known to be shark infested, which
Fuck
doesn't,
that shit.
I know, fuck that shit, but it doesn't worry him at all, literally at all. And number 2, these are, I know.
Frank Foster's
but
special.
He's also keep in mind,
But he grew up here.
He grew up here.
there.
Yeah.
This is his backyard. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And honestly, I mean, even though I don't want to encounter a shark, but the statistics of being in the ocean and actually being approached and bit by a shark are pretty damn low.
I mean, I live in it could be argued, I live in an area where I could walk out my door. There's bears, there's
That's right.
coyotes, there's all sorts of things, but I don't live in fear.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
he doesn't
Yeah.
either. So they are shark infested waters. And there's some of the most dangerous waters on the globe. Like there are really strong swells. It's also called the Cape of Storms. Surfers fucking love it there because it creates these ginormous waves. For all of you surfers, it's a great
smashed
place.
up. Yeah.
Oh no, it's a great place to get pitted or drop into a barrel roll. There, for those surfers out there, for all the surfers that follow our podcast, I just wanted to say get pitted or drop into a barrel roll.
I thought what you were going to say is get smashed by hard waves against like coral reefs and things like that.
No.
Or that.
I was going to say get pitted or drop into a barrel roll.
Sure.
So yeah, that's what they love to do there. But
Wait, but do you know what that means?
I do.
Oh, well, smell you. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, I'm not a surfer, but I know what it means.
Look at me challenging you. Oh, I'll know better next time.
So one day, Foster spots a common octopus, which is actually the name of the species, common octopus.
Oh,
Not that it's common in any way, but
no Tino Shade octopus.
That's right. But that's its name. And he begins to watch this little guy go about its business in its natural habitat. And soon after, Foster starts seeing this octopus more and more until it got to the point that he's starting to wonder, is this octopus watching me? Like, who's watching who here? They each had...
Who's zooming who, octopus?
Yes, who's zooming who? They had their eyes on each other, and over time, they form a legit relationship, which is completely wild. And this relationship they formed is the basis for the documentary My Octopus Teacher. So I should say, of course, as you know, we'll warn you, spoiler alert, if you're planning on watching this movie and you haven't yet, you should go watch it and then come back so we can talk about it, because I want to hear what everyone thinks too. Have you seen it yet, Suze?
Camion,
You're gonna.
I have seen
I
it.
know. I was like, "There's no way you haven't seen it," because I know you love octopus.
I have seen it. My friend Paul Wontorek, hi Paul, recommended it, and I was so excited you're doing this Spark. And I
love
was
it.
like, when should I say that I've seen it? And I think this is the moment when I say I've seen it and I'm super excited. And the relationship to the Spark I just did is bananas because you just, like you just said, they had this bond with each other, which takes us to one of those ways. The affection.
We're going to get
the affection
there.
doesn't have to come from people. It can come from your octopus teacher.
Your octopus teacher, if you're lucky enough to have one.
I got to get me one.
You do. You really do. All right. So we're going to hit on some of these things, but I think we're going to come up against some other things in your list. But so first of all, I'm not going to go through the whole movie, but I am going to touch on like some of the highlights.
Oh God!
If you know anything about octopus or octopi, you know that they are incredibly smart, like fucking problem solving smart, insanely smart. And so
talented.
After some time, like watching each other, Foster captured this really extraordinary thing on camera. I had never seen this or ever heard of it. But one of the ways that octopus protect themselves from predators if they're in a conducive environment is to collect shells. Hundreds of shells. They collect them with each arm and with each little sucker on each arm. So like imagine 8 arms just covered with shells. And then they fold these arms up and around themselves like a ball with all the shells facing outward.
It's bananas.
And it looks like this tight pile of rocks.
Yes.
But it's like armor, honestly. And that's what the octopus is doing. He or she is building a suit of armor to shield its head, which is the most dangerous place for them to be attacked. And Foster captures this moment on film, watching the octopus do it. And it's effing phenomenal.
It's bananas. It's crazy.
And he had no idea what it was doing. He even looked it up in scientific journals and was trying to find out like what the heck is going on.
What the
and
fuck
later
is
in the
that
movie,
octopus doing?
Yeah, he realizes like when a shark comes along and the octopus does it again, he figures out what it is. But I'd never seen any footage like that before. So it was extraordinary what he was able to capture.
It's extraordinary. And I don't want to jump your Spark.
Don't jump my Spark, Suze.
But the just focusing on this moment, that I wish that octopus had a name. Not that we need to. What's that word when people try to like personify animals?
It? Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't mean to do that, but can we give it a name just so that we don't have to say octopi and octopus for the rest of this? Let's call it Roger.
Hey, so this is my Spark.
Oh, sorry. What do you want to call it?
I call it things throughout. Do we have to give it a name?
No. Yes. We'll call it Jerry. Listen, when Jerry does that thing where it makes itself look like a pile of rocks, it is one of the most batshit crazy things I have ever seen.
It was amazing.
And that he captured it. I could see how it started to refill his spark tank. Like it started to relieve his burnout. And it seems like he started to be delighted by the world again.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely put him on track. It was one of the key moments for sure. But the moment that he felt this really seismic shift in their relationship, one day after, like I would say for several weeks of them observing each other from a very safe distance, they've gradually got closer and closer together. And on this particular unforgettable day, Foster reaches his hand out and just a finger really, and slowly, like from under his or her den, our little buddy reaches out with one tentacle and makes contact. And she put her tentacle literally like right into Foster's hand in the most like gentle and curious way. And it was like really feeling his hand, and the little suckers were attaching. And they have this magical moment of connection that I just think is so breathless.
It's beautiful.
And
I'm so
then-
happy to be reminded of this. And also, Cams, we don't have to call the octopus Jerry. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I just want to clean that up.
That's okay. This moment is breathless. And then, of course, Foster realizes, oh, shit, I'm about to run out of breath.
Oh, that's right.
Remember
he doesn't have a
that?
tank on.
He's like,
he doesn't have a tank on.
I'm in the middle of this beautiful, beautiful moment and I have to go up for air. So he didn't want to break the connection, of course, but he has to breathe. So he has, this is so amazing, this like sense of urgency of like, shit, I've got to go get some more air. But he also has to like really carefully unstick himself from the octopus without like breaking that bond. Because if he goes quickly, he'll startle the octopus, or if he like tears himself away quickly,
undo all of that like slow bonding that had been occurring. Oh my
that had
God.
taken so long. And so Foster described that moment. I thought was really interesting. He said, that's when I realized this animal trusts me. She no longer sees me as a threat, and her fear changes to curiosity, which is interesting because it's like you said, it was that's the same thing that was happening for Foster. Is like his mind was engaging in a curious exploration again.
Yes.
And he said that's when the real excitement comes and you think, oh my goodness, I'm being let into the secret world of this wild animal. And that's when you feel on fire. And I just love that. I just like, it was super, super delightful to watch this on film and to see their relationship as it formed. It was kind of like a little rom-com montage. Like they had a meet cute. They're playful with each other. They hang out. He follows the octopus around and films things that she does, you know.
And slowly,
really sweet.
slowly they kind of come together. Slowly.
Yeah.
There's a patience about that documentary that is so, but with payoff.
Yes.
It's like real magic.
I would describe that patience also as the patience you might have with yourself when you are recovering from trauma or when you are healing from burnout and, you know, letting yourself have that time. This all happened very organically. He didn't start going into the water with his camera. He was just like, I'm going to go into the water every day. I'm going to make myself do it. He did not think like because remember, he was burnt out from making documentaries. He was not like, I'm going to go into the water and make another film. He was like, I need to heal.
To recover. Yeah. Wow.
So these creatures, these octopus are phenomenal. Like
phenomenal.
In addition to their brain, which by the way, I didn't realize this. Maybe I had heard it somewhere, but never put it together. These little guys have to teach themselves everything. I mean, everything, because they are completely alone in the world from day one. Their father dies shortly after mating with the female. So like they have sex and then the male dies. And then the mother stays alive just to hatch these eggs. And that's it. She births about 500,000 eggs. 500,000 tiny little octopus, and only a handful of those survive. So those that do survive are entirely on their own, and they have to figure everything out for themselves. Like, so all of that, like how to avoid predators, figure it out. You're on your own.
And then after she does that, after she pops out all those eggs, did you say, does she just peace out, and is she like deuces, or does she die? Like what happens?
She does,
to
and
the
we'll
mother?
talk about this particular one at the end.
Okay.
But the female die after giving birth.
God.
Yeah.
Good.
And so all those little
this is
babies,
a good spark. There's something in there. There's a good spark. There's
Yeah.
There's a great natural metaphor in there.
There
Yeah, it's great.
there is. And he, of course, he knew it was coming too because he understood the life cycle of these animals. But
oh my God,
yeah.
it's so poignant. Oh,
it's so poignant. So anyhow, all these octopus who are born are on their own, and they're so freaking smart, and they have to get smart real fast on their own. They're resourceful and they're intelligent, and they don't have anyone else to learn from. They don't have any buddies who are like, hey, if you hide under here, this is where they can't get you. It's amazing. So in addition to their smarts, they have what Foster calls their incredible creativity to deceive.
What? This is the best.
Dude, they're
and
amazing.
Just based on what you've just said a couple of times, maybe the name for the octopus could be Buddy. I don't know.
Little
I'm just
Buddy.
saying.
I call him Little Buddy. Well, I call her Little Buddy and Little Friend quite a bit in my Spark.
Aww.
So that's kind of what I was thinking of her as Little Buddy.
Okay. Okay.
If that feels, if you want to make that official, I feel comfortable with that.
Okay.
All right, Little Buddy.
Have the t-shirts printed. Maybe Little Buddy can be one of the Spark File podcast pals.
He has to be. She has to be. Little Buddy. Little Buddy. Wait, maybe it's Little Buddy. Lil. I think it's Little Buddy.
Buddy.
Yeah.
You have to say her name like that. Little Buddy. This is going to be great. Okay, great.
Okay. So they have this incredible creativity to deceive. They are constantly being hunted by sharks in particular. But here's a couple things our little buddies have going for them. Number one, the surface of the octopus, her skin, if you will, can transform in a million ways. She can make it spiky. She can make it smooth. She can grow little horns out of the top of her head when she chooses. And this is all like making herself look a little bit more. So she should be a
costume designer.
Yes. It makes her look more like the coral when she wants to hide there. It can take the shape of rocks like a sculpture. Its body is truly liquid, literally fluid-like. So it can also make itself appear to be flowing in the tide, just like the kelp would be. So it can make itself blend in there. They can match color, texture, pattern, skin with their surroundings so they can be camouflaged. And the ink jet that it can produce, so it literally disappears into a cloud of smoke when it's being chased. I mean, they are so incredible.
Yeah.
And so one of the amazing things that I really got a kick out of in this was just thinking about, in addition to the creative ways they deceive and hide in order to survive, they've also done studies about octopus and their ability to play. And it's kind of unusual for, there's only certain species of animals that play. In another documentary called Power of Play, they studied the importance of play in healthy human interaction. Maybe there's that laughter component, Suze, and how playing as a child is essential to being mentally healthy as an adult. It can be true in animal behavior as well. There's a few notable animals who seem to engage in acts of playfulness, and the Pacific octopus is one of them. In that documentary, they were spraying down one of the tanks that were full of fish and octopus, and one of these little buddies came over to check out what was going on. And the octopus started to reach out of the water and reach for the fresh water that was being sprayed, just like kids playing in a freaking sprinkler. He was reaching for and playing with the spray of water, and he eventually turned himself completely upside down. So the spray was tickling all of his tentacles underneath him, which is really, really amazing. And anytime they stopped spraying, the octopus would squirt water back. Hey, keep going here. We got something going here. So they did a whole game of back and forth. They're just fucking delightful. And then another, an experiment in Scientific American at the Seattle aquarium, they put several octopus in a tank, along with this little floating little bobber, like the size of a pill bottle or something. And at first the octopus didn't do anything with it, but then eventually one of the animals blew like a jet of water at the pill bottle and caused it to like bounce around. And it was delighted with this. And he got the other one involved, and they just like batted this little bottle around like more than 20 times back and forth, just like the way we like bounce a ball.
Oh my God.
And it was clearly for play, because like when we bounce a ball, we're not trying to like get rid of the ball. We're trying to figure out, what can we do with this? And how will it respond if I do this or that? And they're playing around doing the same exact thing. And in this documentary, we see that Foster discovers his little buddy playing with a school of fish. And it was beautiful to watch. It seemed like at first he might be chasing them in order to feed off of them. But then you realize when he catches them, he's not harming them in any way. He's just like playfully swatting at them so that the whole school of fish will like redirect one way and then the other way. And he's just playing. I just think it's amazing to consider animals, like how they might spend their days. And some of them were like, yeah, I'm going to hang out, see what the fish are doing right now.
Sometimes I have to hunt for food. Sometimes I want to rest. Sometimes I get to play.
Yep. So watching that, like that reminds me of the laughter in your spark, because it's, purposeful in like play has a purpose as well, I guess.
Yeah.
So over time, we watch Foster and his little buddy as they build this lovely relationship. And then one day, Foster captures footage of our guy being hunted by a shark. And this was tough to watch. Foster said the first instinct was to like scare the shark away.
To intervene.
Yeah. But he knew that would be interfering and that would be unfair. But pajama shark can smell the octopus, and it's not so much that they can see it, but they can smell it. So it's harder for him or her to evade that type of shark because it's not a visual thing. And so she is hiding under this rock. But pajama shark have these nose that are built to like be able to fit into these small cracks for exactly this purpose. So one of the sharks gets his nose under there and like clamps down on one of her arms.
It's very stressful.
It's very stressful. He pulls her out from under the rock and does a death roll, just like a gator would, until he tears one of her arms off. Thankfully, he seems to be the shark is satisfied with that and, and takes off with it. And our little buddy gets herself safely back under the rock, where she stays for a week. And of course, Foster is stressing out the entire time, thinking like it might be the end for her. Like, is she in there dying? And in the film, he said, I felt very vulnerable, as if somehow what happened to her had happened to me in some way. You start thinking about your own death, your own vulnerability, worry about your family, your child. I hadn't been a person who was overly sentimental towards animals before, but I realized I was changing. She was teaching me to become sensitized to the other, especially wild creatures. And this led me to a little bit of a side spark. This is the mirror neurons that I mentioned earlier. You talked about like that experience of like when we want to cry, turning on a movie and watching something happen to someone else that we know will make us cry. Mirror neurons are the part of our brains that respond when we see someone else feeling something or experiencing something. And it is essentially how we explain empathy. And I'm truly fascinated by this. Also, like in relation to your spark, Suze, because they haven't figured out why, if we all have mirror neurons, why do some people have such vastly different levels of empathy? And why it seems in this current moment in time, in our country anyway, it seems that we've been seeing more and more people who have to experience something themselves in order to believe it's true, or to believe it's real, or to feel something about it. And I don't know, this is just a total side spark. I either I'm going to dive into it later, or someone else can dive into it later. But I just think like there's potentially something affecting our mirror neurons, or we all need to reconnect with nature, get out of ourselves for a little while, just like Foster did, in order to like reignite our sense of empathy. It's just a thought, but I do think some of these things are related in a way. So back to our little friend, the octopus. Good news. The arm grows back.
Little Buddy got an arm.
Little Buddy got a little arm. About a week after the incident, she came out of her den in a tiny, tiny little arm.
Little baby arm.
She got a little baby arm, started to grow back. And just 100 days later, it was fully grown. So
that is octopi are amazing.
Amazing.
That 100 days later, that
Fully
little
grown.
buddy had a fresh, fully grown arm.
It's incredible. It's
just
incredible.
another reason why they're just amazing.
Yeah.
Just amazing.
They're phenomenal. And Foster said like he could feel her confidence grew back with it, obviously. And he felt his own confidence growing back too, that he had been so disconnected and so burnt out. This animal was gradually building him back up again. And he said his relationship with humans was changing and starting to revive as well. And if this animal could withstand an attack that severe and fully recover, he was starting to feel like maybe he could fully recover too.
Wow. Look at him processing through that burnout.
Look at that. So
Amazing.
as I was watching this movie and marveling at how incredible these animals are, I was reminded of this experience I was working on that I had when I was working on a Blue Man project. This is a small tangent with a few side sparks, but you've got to go with me for a second.
Up. You know I'm with you.
So one time with Blue Man Group, we were shooting an episode of Undercover Boss. And it wasn't,
I like where this tangent is headed.
Right.
Yes.
It wasn't for Blue Man. Like we weren't going to be the boss wasn't going to be a Blue Man, but it was for the cruise line, Norwegian Cruise Line, which we had a show on. So they were filming on the ship, and we would do a segment with them, like from the theater on board. And as the company's spokesperson, I had to get on the ship for the filming of the show. It was a Mediterranean cruise. I did not mind that part of my job. I did not mind that I had to go for a week, because once you're on, you can't, like, I couldn't just go for the filming day and then leave. I was forced to spend a week. So I had the most amazing time, sidebar. But as it relates to my spark, I ended up bonding with the crew from the Discovery Channel. And I really loved the director of the show. Hi, Gary, if you're listening.
Hi, Gary.
Hi, Gary. And we would all hang out after the shoot each day. And I would essentially corner Gary and ask him to tell me about the coolest things he had ever filmed, because he had worked for Nat Geo and Discovery, and I'm a freaking nerd, so these are like the most exciting channels on TV to me, so history and all of that. So I was like, you got to tell me, like, what have you filmed? What's been the most amazing things? And he said one of his favorite things was a shoot they did at the giant crystal caves in Mexico. Have you heard of this? Do you know what these are?
I have not. I know about the Crystal Caverns in Kentucky, but tell me about Mexico.
Oh, Suze, these are amazing. There are caves in Chihuahua, Mexico, filled with these giant, and I mean giant, columns of gypsum. They look like these Superman's fortress, like in the 80s version of Superman with Christopher Reeves. So there's they've been there for 500,000 years, completely uninterrupted, until they were found recently by this mining company. But the thing is, the caves where these are one of the hottest places on Earth. The cave can get to like 113 degrees with humidity levels at 100%. So if you as a human go down in these caves without proper gear, your brain will boil. Susan, it will boil.
Fluids. Do you have to wear like an ice hat? What proper gear?
Suze, they made these suits that are like cooling suits that first of all, they had to make them. They only last for 45 minutes. So you can only for filming, they had 45 minutes to get yourself as far down into this tunnel, into this cave as you could.
God. Yeah.
Try to film it, try to make sure that you get yourself out before your brain boils. I mean, what hell?
Could you just die?
Could you just die? Oh, you actually could. So you have to be careful. This is a major side spark for me. You know how they have movies about
this
cave
is such
diving?
A good spark.
Right?
Yeah.
They have movies about cave diving. I want a movie set in or around these caves. Let's make that happen. Like the tension that just as he was telling me what they had to go through to capture what was down in these caves, it's an incredible adventure. And I haven't seen any movies set there, so that needs to change. So that's A. But B, then Gary tells me that he also worked with James Cameron and he filmed at the site of the Titanic. Not the movie, but the
real site.
Actual site of the Titanic.
Wow.
When they went down there with multiple cameras and those deep sea pods to try to get a closer look. So he has explored some very rare air or some very rare sea. He has literally been in places on this earth that only a handful of human beings can say that they've been.
Wow.
I was mesmerized by this. So then, of course, this is how it relates back to my spark. I had to ask him, what is the one thing you would film if you could film anything in the world? And he said, giant squid.
Oh.
And I totally get it, Suze, because no one has been able to get any decent footage of them because they live so deep in the sea. Or if they're spotted not that deep, they will immediately go so deep in the sea that literally no light exists there. And they're fast as hell. These creatures are mind-blowingly big, or so we think, but it's hard to document things you can't find. But the male squid supposedly can be up to 43 feet long, and the female can be 39, 40 feet long. But frankly, we don't even have enough documentation to know for sure.
But there have been some big old giant squid that have washed up ashore.
That's right.
So we do have that.
We have some of those, but we don't know.
I mean, we don't. Someone does.
Someone does. But seeing them in their live, in their element, we don't have much. And the ones obviously the ones that washed up have died. So are they small and were attacked by something larger? Are they, we just don't know.
Oh my God.
Right?
Amazing. Yeah.
So
something larger. Holy moly.
So the idea of giant squid conjures up like Moby Dick and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea.
Yes.
Like these enormous sea creatures that we've seen people draw like in science fiction or old captain logs from the 1700s or 1800s. Gary said that James Cameron actually approached the government with an idea of how to capture these giant squid on film.
What?
His idea was to simulate. See, part of the problem is they're so freaking fast. So even if we spot them, we can't catch them to film them. So James Cameron's idea was, how do you get the squid to look for us instead of us looking for the squid? So his idea was to simulate squid bait, which is a whale. So since giant squid eat whales, he pitched the idea.
Christ.
He pitched the idea to create a sub that looks and moves like, say, an orca. So instead of us chasing the giant squid, it chases us, and that's how we'll get our footage.
Maybe just strap a camera to an orca? I don't know. I mean, I'm sure James Cameron thought this out thoroughly. But wow.
He truly pitched the government. The government denied.
They were like, pass.
We're going to pass
hard
on
pass.
that. Just the notion that we could build that large of a fish is ridiculous.
Submarine?
And that the
Amazing.
squid, as smart as they are, wouldn't be able to tell that it isn't real. It would hear the gears and the mechanics of it. You know what I mean? Like, it would not be fooled
Yeah.
for a second.
Yeah, they're really fucking smart.
So suffice to say, it may be a while before we get a good look at these creatures, but it's so good for the imagination. When you think about how playful and how clever these small size or more regular, familiar size octopus are, it really makes me wonder what the giant squid are capable of.
Ooh.
When Gary was talking about it, genuinely, he had the look of like Captain Quint from Jaws. You know, like the played by Robert Shaw, that when he gets that glimmer in his eye and he's like, oh, he's going to capture that shark. He had that same look in his eye that was like, we've got to find this creature. We have to, and he didn't want to kill it. He wanted obviously to film it and to understand it. So speaking of filming and understanding things, back to our film, there's a moment in the film where Foster notes that 80% of an octopus's perception is not in their brain. It's in their tentacles. And it doesn't go to their brain. Like, the information they receive and decision-making happens like in an isolated way in their tentacles.
Yeah.
And they literally feel things and perceive things from other parts of their body rather than in their brain. And of all the things, this really got me thinking, if that's true for them, it has to be at least partially true for humans. That that there are things that we know from our senses that it's not from logic in our brain.
Yeah.
It's from senses, right?
Okay. All right. I'll take that ride.
Right. And I just think, like, because there's no way to measure it, sometimes when you talk about it, it gets lumped in sort of the loosey-goosey, the, oh my gosh, what's that name? The, all the touchy-feely sort of like woo-woo things.
It goes into the woo container.
Woo-woo.
Yeah.
And it doesn't get much credence, like, scientifically, because there's no way to measure it. But I really do think we can point to times when we just know something and we couldn't say why. We could just feel it. So I started to do just a tiny bit of research on that too, that like the human body sends 11 million bits per second to the brain for processing, but the conscious mind is only able to process like 50 bits. So 11 million bits of information to 50 bits that actually are, perceived and processed. So the vast majority of sensations are ignored by our conscious mind, while like those that we can recognize and process, we can name them and they become perceptions, which we can categorize and like understand.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot of information we're getting and we're receiving at any time that isn't making it into the processor.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And some people, I think, talk about it like a gut brain, which is like referred to as the sort of the bundle of nerves that is like a second brain. There's parts of your body that connect to the gut brain. And we call that like a gut feeling, like you just know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot to look into there. Like you had mentioned even in your spark about like your body knowing things even before you do.
Yeah. And also storing that knowledge, like the body. Yeah. Until you process it out, you know how it can get stored or stuck.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So I think, I found it very, very curious that they can prove that they know that to be true in octopus, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's sort of collectively known, at least in Western medicine, that humans might have that ability as well.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So back to Foster and his little buddy. Near the 1 year mark, Foster had this really, really special moment where our little buddy hugged him, kind of. He didn't like...
Kind of?
She did. Well, she didn't put her arms, in a traditional like tentacles all the way around, but she gripped onto his chest. Her entire body gripped onto his chest.
Oh my
and
God.
stayed there
Oh my
for
God.
a while. And he was just below the surface, so he could like pop up and get breath. And they were able to stay like that for a significant amount of time. And it was astonishing.
Amazing.
It was
and
really
I had,
amazing.
I had so many thoughts and feelings when I was watching that moment. And it made me think of how, like, when our animals cuddle up to us, when we cuddle up to each
Yep.
other, that sort of feeling of affection and connection.
Yep.
And how it just, as I said in my spark, how it feels like it does lower your blood pressure. It does feel like there's a cascade of what we would think of as the positive feeling
That's right.
chemicals. And even watching it
Ah,
on that documentary,
that's your
gave me
mirror
that-
neuron. Mhm.
it gave me that feeling. And I also think sometimes, like when POTUS is in my sweatshirt, and I'm like, I think POTUS and I love each other so much, but also it could be, I think POTUS is seeking the warmest spot in the house. And I was like, I wonder if that octopus is just enjoying, just like, you are so warm.
Maybe, but I think, I think that even thinking that the octopus needed to be warm is probably projection as well. Because
You're right.
That's not really how they live, but it's
You're
so
right.
interesting to listen. Like, you're literally talking about your mirror neurons and what you felt while you watched them experience this tender
That's right.
moment, and what you were
That's
talking
right.
about with like the creative expression, whether we're the
Yeah.
one who created it or whether we're bearing witness, we
Yes.
can absorb the goodness,
Yes. Camion, preach.
Preach. So we have hit so many of, I'm so glad I took notes while you gave your spark, because I'm like, yeah, we hit all of this. So he's
Amazing.
getting his, social interaction, his affection. And soon he will also cry. We'll talk about that. This
Spoilers.
beautiful long hug was the last physical connection that they had with each other.
Mm.
The next day, our little buddy mated with another octopus and then went into her den.
You know what mating time means?
Yeah, it's not good for either one of them. And I think, I'm just making up a story, but I think that she knew that's what was going to happen to her next. I think she was right on target. And I think that big hug was a goodbye. And so the next day she mates and she goes into her den and she never comes out, because
you don't think but you saying, I think that hug was a like known goodbye.
Yeah.
That isn't anthropomorphism. Do you really think that she knew that arc?
I don't know. I've made up that story in my mind. I mean, I don't know if they're aware of death. I don't know if she's aware of like what comes next for her and then what comes after that. I don't know. Or if somehow, like on some level, she knew this would be the last opportunity. But doesn't think about it in that way.
Afoot.
Yeah. Change is coming, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like thinking about it.
Me too.
Yeah.
But anyway, they had that connection.
Mm.
She mated with another octopus. Then she went into her den, and Foster still went down and filmed every day and visited, but he definitely couldn't get in close enough to see the eggs or anything. But he knew as it was happening, once the eggs arrived and they hatched and birthed 500,000 children. Then began the slow, like, passing away of our little buddy. And it's hard to watch, and you can see how much it meant to him, this simple and pure connection between a man and an animal was really, really touching. I was inspired by how he took the time to let an idea come to him organically. Yes. He wasn't pushing for any outcome. As we mentioned before, he needed to heal, and he needed to give himself time to heal. And whether he was conscious of it or not, he was actually going through the process of healing this burnout,
Yeah.
as your spark illustrated, and he actually illustrated how physical activity, breathing, social interaction, laughter and playfulness, affection, crying, and getting into nature, like getting out of himself a little bit, helped him to
And making
reconnect.
something.
And then making something.
He made a fucking documentary.
And then creative expression. Helped him to like reconnect with his humanity, his natural wells of energy, and his creativity. And he took that passion and purpose that he started to feel getting up each day and poured it into a creative project. And it's beautiful. He said this project really helped him start to care about all animals and think about how lovely each of their lives are and how precious all of our lives are. He said that his octopus teacher taught me to feel that I am part of this place, not a visitor. And that is a huge difference. And that's my spark.
That is a profoundly excellent spark.
Thank you.
And I cannot believe what a beautiful set of complimentary sparks we accidentally made.
I know.
I have so many thoughts. I was so watching that documentary and hearing you talk about it kind of brings it back freshly. That feeling of like, I could have walked into any gin joint in this just by making that commitment to himself that he needed to recover from that burnout.
Yeah.
That he was going to go into the ocean every day, that he was just going to go to the ocean every day, that he was going to swim and breathe and be surrounded by nature. And then eventually started taking the camera, eventually, make the connection with this little buddy of one of, it's just amazing. It's amazing. I have so many thoughts in my head right now. I'm going to try to not explode into a shower of sparks. One thought is, he showed up for a practice.
Yes.
And it reminds me of how when we talk about like just by showing up day after day after day after day after day, things will come to you. You will kick open creative doors just by keeping your pen moving, just by returning to the ocean, just by,
going on a walk each day.
If you keep showing up, things will come to you that would not have come to you if you just were sort of like, I'm going to wait for the muse to visit. I'm just going to,
That's right.
It's that I think is relevant. And then in no particular order, I have on my wall, and I've had this for, it's coming up on 20 years. So I studied, and Hunter Bell studied with this writing teacher who we love, who we talk about, who we owe such a debt of gratitude towards, named Linda Berry. And she's an amazing artist. But at the beginning of each day of this writing seminar that she teaches, she would have one of those big flip charts outside of the room. And she would like, welcome to day 1, welcome to day 2, welcome to day 3. And there was one day when we walked up to the classroom and the flip chart had she's an artist, and she had probably in Sharpie or something, drawn this sort of cartoonish cephalopod, and each of the cephalopod's tentacles were holding something different. So like one had a pen, one had a brush, one had a heart, one had a cup of steaming coffee. And I've had it. I asked her if I could have permission to have it. I had her sign it. And I just cherish it because it's a reminder of my creativity.
Yes.
And sort of the, how our creativity has these different arms and different sort of, it extends from us in different ways and shows up in different ways. So my cephalopod might have, it might have, a pen to write with, and it might have a brush to paint with, and it might have, a ball of yarn to knit with, and it might have a camera in one hand, or a tentacle full of flowers to arrange, or a copy of manuscript that contains my story. And when Cams and I were in class over the summer, we were taking a business class, and they asked us to draw an illustration of what we wanted to do. And I was like, there's so many things we want to do under the umbrella of the Spark File.
Mm-hmm.
And so the illustration, my purpose is to free creativity, self-expression, connection, empathy, authenticity, all of those things, laughter. But my drawn representation of it was a cephalopod with a big smile on his face, listening to the Spark File. And in each tentacle, there's a different piece of creativity, of an instrument of creativity. And somebody in the class said, that's the Spark File crest. That should be your logo. That should be on t-shirts. And I was like, well, we have a logo, but I do like it for a t-shirt idea. So that's a spark.
Yes.
The Spark File crest, which is Lil Buddy, the cephalopod, also represented in the Spark File podcast pals, Little Buddy. Sutton Foster, please crochet us that octopus. That'll be the prototype. That's right. I know that Sutton Foster has crocheted an octopus toilet tissue cover.
Yes,
it covers one roll. Yes. So I'm going to put in my order for that. There's something about this. I'm so sparked by this, Kimmy Ann. There's something about, if you haven't watched My Octopus Teacher, please watch it. And costume designers, please note what an octopus can do in terms of its shapes.
My God.
And its adaptive camouflage with its skin. There's a scientific name for it. I forget what it's called. It's one of the most remarkable things I have ever seen on planet Earth.
Yep.
Its ability to to inject different color cells essentially to the surface so that it in a breath changes its color.
As it glides over, different colors, it changes to be those colors. It's phenomenal.
If it hasn't been done already, it should be done as a costume. This spark goes out to Hunter Bell and the Other World creators, like a costume that can do something like that.
Oh my gosh.
And then I also just want to say a great big hosanna to documentarians and documentaries that go places and take us along with us in the bathysphere. We've talked about this before, whether it's Tiger King or whether it's My Octopus Teacher or whether it's Hands on a Hard Body, or there's so many great documentaries that go places in time and space and history and take us with them. And I'm so fucking sparked by it that I can't even tell you. So these are just some of the sparks. This is
love it.
Yeah.
Sparks begetting sparks.
Sparks on sparks on sparks on sparks.
Love it. And I'm 100% with you. The costuming, I think he even refers to her at one point like the lady in the red dress, because there is a moment where she is if you could imagine gliding like across the seafloor, and she has 8 arms, but she somehow pushes like 6 of them sort of towards the back. So they're flowing in the wind, and 2 of them look like they are walking. And so he says, and then she turns into the lady in the red dress, because she's sort of this burnt red kind of color, and her body is expanded and flowing out towards the back. It's extraordinary. It's beautiful.
It's extraordinary. It looks, the first time I saw an octopus transform in a moment like that with the camouflage, all the tactics, I thought it was CGI. I didn't think that it could possibly be real.
Yeah.
And then watching this documentary, I was like, that is real. That is not CGI. He captured it.
He must have captured things that have not been captured before. I really believe that because of the amount of time. And he mentions it, like he doesn't brag about that outright, but he does mention at one point in the documentary that there were certain things he saw that he tried to look up in these scientific journals and to try to study them and understand them more, and that he couldn't find anything about them. he even said he went diving at least one, I don't know how many, but he went diving at night because it is generally understood that despite all the fun they're having during the day, octopus are nocturnal.
Nighttime is the right time.
Yeah, exactly. So he went down at night and got footage. Yeah. So
amazing.
He did extraordinary work.
You said this, you articulated this in such a beautiful way with your entire spark, but just to sum it all up, and in the context, also placing it right against my spark, it's that documentary is a beautiful depiction of somebody who, as you use your words, is in crisis and processes all the way through and out of the tunnel of burnout. He's a changed person.
He's a changed person.
We love watching. This is a theory that I have come up with recently, and it's as a result of teaching, weirdly, acting for the camera. We love watching and reading people going through change.
Yes.
We love observing people going through change. So when I teach it in on-camera acting, I say, even if the scene is literally your lines, you have 2 lines in the scene, we need to see something change. Humans want to see other humans change. And that documentary, My Octopus Teacher, is a beautiful depiction of watching someone very patiently, very slowly, with connection with another being.
Yes.
With breathing, with physical activity, with joy, with all of the things that you mentioned, we see them change.
I'm going to add to that, Sue, is that, culturally, I think we all love a transformation. And there's a million examples of us seeing someone who has been transformed. But, and I celebrate that and I love that, but I would say we are also particularly interested in watching and experiencing people going through change, as you said, which is all the messy steps that lead to the transformation. It's not just like, how did it look in the end? It is walking side by side with each other and others as we go through all of those steps that get you to the transformation. And I like artwork that shows us that.
And life experiences. And it brings me back to, we're putting together this group for the Spark File Select Group Creativity Coaching program. And when we talk to artists who are like, I'm in the messy middle of, I'm just a crispy, burnt out, can you get, how can you take it? How can you stand it? And I'm like, because we like walking next to people as they go through change.
Because this is part of it. This is part of the process. And a lot of times people don't get to they don't see other people in the midst of their 10,000 hours becoming an expert and becoming transformed. And so we're like, we want to see that. We'll sit right beside you as you, type and cry. That's part of it all.
I was texting with Celia Keenan-Bolger before we got on. Hi, Celia. And I don't know how to say this without sounding like a total fucking douchebag, but this sort of it feels like it points to our life's work.
Oh.
It feels like it points to
this episode
you and I,
right
Laura,
here.
Sort of like you and I, Laura, like this, like walking with people as they work through these changes as creatives. And
that gets me excited, Suze. I just love the way you articulated
it also sounds
that.
It sounds grandiose and a little bit douchey, but I think it's also true.
It's a purpose. It's like feeling our purpose and what we're here to do. Yeah.
I could go on and on, but I think we better wrap this up. This is this might be the longest episode of the podcast ever. So should we wrap it?
I think so. Yep.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Well, then that's it. This episode of The Spark File was made on Muncie, Lenape, and Seminole land. And as always, we hope that it put another bunch of sparks in your file. Listen, if there's a spark you'd like to quote John Harley, listen, gang, if there's a spark you'd like us to explore, or if you've taken a spark and fanned it into a creative flame and you'd like to share that, email us at thesparkfile@gmail.com or submit it through our website, thesparkfile.com.
We will even happily take your feedback, but you know the price of admission. First, you got to share a creative risk that you have taken recently.
You can follow us on social media at The Spark File, and be sure to subscribe, rate, and 5-star review this podcast if you are so moved. It really helps other people to find us. If you like this podcast, we do hope you'll share it with people that you love. If you didn't like it, we encourage you to fully complete the stress response cycle by running far, far away from us.
Good one, Suze. If something tickles your fancy and gets your creative juices flowing, we are writing you a forever permission slip to make that thing that has been knocking at your door. It's your turn to take a spark and fan it into a flame.
You got to take it
and make it.
Bye, friends.
Everybody.
When I bump into something that inspires me, I dump it in my spark file. Could be something that I wanna make or how I wanna be. I pump it in my spark file. I jump into my spark file. Let's open up the spark file.
Hi, friends. Susan Blackwell from The Spark File here to let you know that the doors are open for the Spark File Illume, a 9-month group creativity coaching mastermind that invites you to be the Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer of your creativity. But what does that mean? That means in 9 months in Illume, you will clarify and advance your big creative goals and learn how to effectively share your work with the world. Now, if you're listening to this and you're an experienced creative or an accomplished professional who seeks a space where it is safe to attempt something you've never tried before, or complete a big creative project, or take your work to the next level and acquire the skills needed to share your creative work with the world, Illume might be right for you. We are calling in emotionally intelligent, high-functioning creatives who are ready to level up. You can find out more by going to thesparkfile.com/Illume, but do it now to find out if Illume is right for you and to save with early bird discounts. That's thesparkfile.com/Illume. Take a leap, take a risk. Go to thesparkfile.com/Illume and join us for Illume.